Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something that, well, sounds simple, but actually trips a lot of people up. It's the difference between risk and uncertainty. We tend to use them, interchangeably, but they're fundamentally different. And understanding that difference is honestly huge for making better decisions. So our mission today, let's unpack these concepts, define them clearly, and give you a framework to think about them, whether it's just everyday stuff or big business strategy. By the end of this, you'll definitely have a much clearer handle on how to navigate the unknown.
Absolutely. And, getting that distinction right is key. It helps you cut through the noise, learn faster, and avoid that feeling of just being overwhelmed with information. Because it really helps you focus your energy, right? Knowing what you can measure versus what's, well, fundamentally unknowable.
Okay, let's dive right in then. Risk, uncertainty. Sounds similar. Are we generally getting this wrong? How different are they really?
Oh, they are fundamentally different. And yeah, getting it clear is vital. Think of risk like this. Outcomes are uncertain, sure, but, and this is the key part, we can actually assign probabilities. The classic example is rolling a die. You don't know what number will come up, but you know the odds, right? 1 in 6 for each face. So we can define risk as essentially a measurable probability of loss.
Okay, measurable probability, got it. So what about uncertainty then?
Uncertainty, well, that's when outcomes are truly unknown, maybe even unpredictable or unprecedented. We just cannot assign reliable probabilities. These are the kinds of unknowns we can't really model effectively.
Right. And this isn't just us trying to figure this out now, is it? I mean, some pretty big names in economics have thought hard about this. People like Frank Knight, Keynes.
Yeah.
What did they add to this understanding?
Exactly. Frank Knight, he was quite clear. Only risk can be quantified. Uncertainty, he argued, is inherently immeasurable. And Keynes, he focused on the element of surprise and uncertainty, how these unpredictable events really shake up decisions, both for individuals and businesses, precisely because you can't see them coming.
Makes sense. Examples always help make these things stick. How does this play out in the real world?
Okay, good point. Let's take a bank. They forecast loan default risk. They use models, right, looking at things like probability of default, exposure at default, loss given default. They're calculating a risk based on data they have. It's measurable.
Right, standard practice.
But then think about, say, early 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic. No model saw that coming on a global scale. Or the immediate shock to supply chains after the Russia-Ukraine war started. Those were pure uncertainty, unforeseen, unquantifiable game changers.
It really is striking when you put it like that. How often we probably mix these up in our own heads, right? And maybe waste energy trying to predict something that's fundamentally uncertain instead of managing the actual risks we can measure. It makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Where does confusing these two cause the most trouble in, say, business planning? Okay, so distinction made. Risk is measurable. Probability, uncertainty is not. Now, let's get practical. Once we identify something as a risk, how do we start to categorize it to, manage it better?
Yeah, exactly. Knowing the difference is step one, but classifying is how you make it actionable. It's not just academic, it has real consequences. We generally classify risk along a few lines. First, it's source, like where does it come from? Inside or outside? Then its nature, can we control it or not? We also look at its status, which we'll get into more next time, and importantly, its consequences. Is it financial, strategic, legal? This kind of structured thinking helps organizations move from just reacting to proactively managing.
Okay, let's break down that source classification first. Internal versus external.
Right. So internal risk that comes from within the company. Think an employee strike, maybe a data leak caused by an employee, IT system failures, errors in data entry, audit problems. The key thing here is these are generally more manageable because, well, they originate inside your own walls. You have more direct levers.
Makes sense. More levers to pull. And external.
External risk, that's stuff coming from outside, forces you don't control directly, like a stock market crash, a flood hitting your factory, the central bank suddenly hiking interest rates, maybe a government banning an app you rely on, big cybersecurity attacks, macroeconomic downturns, sudden changes in policy. You get the idea. These are usually tougher to handle because they're outside your direct influence.
So for everyone listening, maybe take a second. Think about a challenge you're facing, work or personal. Is it mostly internal, something you can directly influence? Or is it external, coming from the outside? That distinction alone is pretty useful.
Definitely. Now, let's layer on the nature classification. Controllable versus uncontrollable. Controllable risk is, well, exactly what it sounds like. Something you can actually influence or reduce. Like installing fire alarms that reduces fire risk. Or using two-factor authentication makes hacking harder. For a bank, maybe stronger underwriting policies to manage credit risk. You can take concrete steps.
Okay, actions you can take and uncontrollable.
Uncontrollable risk. These are the big ones you often can't do much about preventing. Think wars, earthquakes hitting your key manufacturing zone, new pandemic waves, major market crashes. You mostly have to react and adapt. You can't really stop them from happening.
Right. So putting those together, source and nature, it becomes pretty clear why external uncontrollable risks are seen as the toughest nut to crack, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's coming from outside, and you can't really influence it. Is it just that lack of control, or is there more to it?
It's really that combination. It's the external origin, so you didn't cause it, plus the unpredictability and the lack of levers to pull. You can't prevent it. You often can't even reliably forecast it. It forces a shift. Away from prediction towards resilience, towards being ready to respond fast. And this is where combining these classifications, maybe in a matrix, really helps clarify thinking.
Ah, okay. So this brings us to the 4x2 risk classification matrix. Sounds a bit technical, but I guess it just puts these ideas together visually.
Pretty much, it helps organize your thoughts. Imagine a simple grid. Across the top, maybe internal and external sources. Down the side, controllable and uncontrollable natures. 4 boxes.
Okay, I can picture that.
So, top left box, internal source, controllable nature. This is your highest control zone. Sometimes people use the little memory trick in win-win because you have the most influence here. A banking example. Bad debt rising because your own internal credit checks are too loose. The bank can manage that, right?
Yeah.
Stronger policies, better internal controls, maybe using something like the 3 lines of defense model to make sure checks and balances are working.
Right, that internal control structure. Okay, what about the other box?
Okay, move across. Internal source, but uncontrollable nature. Still pretty high control because it starts inside, even if the specific event isn't totally preventable, maybe like a key employee suddenly leaving. Then, bottom left, external source, but controllable nature, medium control. The threat's outside, like a known cybersecurity vulnerability, but you can take action, like patching systems.
Got it. And the last box, the tough one.
Yeah, bottom right, external source, uncontrollable nature, lowest control. That's your earthquake hitting the factory zone. Or for banks, those pandemic waves we mentioned, or big market crashes. For these, you can't rely on prediction. It's about having buffers, contingency plans, scenario-based capital planning, being ready to weather the storm.
So how does this matrix actually get used in, say, those high-stakes banking situations you mentioned?
Oh, it's fundamental. Banks use this kind of detailed risk classification all the time. For instance, when calculating their risk-weighted assets, the RWA, that's basically figuring out how much capital they need to hold against potential losses based on how risky their assets are. Frameworks like Basel III guide this. Classifying the risk helps determine the weight.
Okay, so it directly impacts how much safety cushion they need.
Exactly. And then there's the uncertainty piece. How do banks handle things like, say, climate risk, which is hard to model precisely? That's where processes like their ICAP come and the internal capital adequacy assessment process. It's their own deep dive, their self-assessment. ICAP has to look beyond standard models, simulate really severe stress events, including those uncertainties. External risks like massive cyber attacks or sudden drastic policy changes get evaluated too, often under stress testing rules from regulators like the ECB or under CRR2 rules or PRA guidelines in the UK. They have to show they can handle serious, even unexpected shocks.
Wow. Okay. So while the banking examples are complex, the core idea seems really applicable anywhere. For you listening, even if you're not running a bank, this structured way of thinking, internal, external, controllable, uncontrollable, can help. Helps you figure out where to focus your energy, right? Whether you're managing a project, leading a team, or even just planning your personal finances. Where are the real risks you can manage? And where do you need backup plans for things outside your control? So let's quickly recap what we've covered in this deep dive. The big takeaway. That vital difference between risk, which you can measure, put probabilities on, and uncertainty, which is fundamentally unknowable, unpredictable. And then the power of classifying risks. Just looking at source, internal, external, and nature, controllable, uncontrollable, gives you this matrix, this map. It shows you where your leverage really is. Often it's not about predicting the unpredictable, but about managing what you can control and building resilience for the rest. Understanding this, it's a shortcut to clearer thinking and better decisions.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought to mull over. How could applying this simple framework, just thinking in terms of source and controllability, change how you approach planning or problem solving? Start looking for examples in your own world. Is this situation a risk I can manage or an uncertainty I need to prepare for differently? You might be surprised how much clarity that brings.
And this is really just scratching the surface of risk classification. We've laid the groundwork today. Next time, we're going deeper. We'll talk about inherent versus residual risk, what risk looks like before and after you try to manage it. Plus, we'll classify risks by their consequences, strategic, operational compliance, reputation, and we'll tie it all together with some really stark real-world cases, like Union Carbide and the Boeing 737 MAX issues. Definitely join us for that one.